are four of us. So it's 6:09. We can go ahead and get started. Thank you all for joining us for this March meeting. Again, our anniversary meeting. Appreciate everyone being here remotely, and hopefully Melissa and David will be able to join us. Emily wrote this afternoon to say she would not be able to make it due to a lot of back and forth with her work and some of the schools within her network restarting, including one in Philadelphia that she's been having to travel back and forth to. So we can go ahead and start with some routine business. Great. All right, first item is the approval of the agenda for tonight's meeting, which was in the pre-reads for everybody. Does anybody have any edits they would want to make to the agenda? We're good. Okay. Any updates that need to come from the leadership team? I don't think so. To the agenda? No. All right. No. I motion to approve the agenda for the meeting. Can I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, great. Thank you. Magdalena, did you raise your hand? I didn't see you.
Magdalena? I wasn't here last week.
Oh, okay. No, that's fine. It was just the approval of the agenda for tonight.
Oh, yes. Aye.
Okay. Next item is approval of the February meeting minutes, which I looked over. I don't think that thank you again, Charles, for doing such a good job with these. I don't think that we have I don't have any updates. Does anybody else have any thoughts on the meeting minutes from February? I know Magdalena, you weren't here. We're good? Okay.
Looks good.
Great. Then I motion to approve the February meeting minutes as written. May I have a second?
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Okay, so we can move into new business, and I will hand that over to Roberto and the team.
Thanks. Thank you, Gabrielle, and thank you all board members for your continued voluntary donation of time and talent to our school. This month's meeting, our colleague, good colleague, and founding principal Delines is away on a scheduled and well-deserved vacation, and so she sends her best to all of you. I'm going to ask Michael to go through these are slides that Delines has originally prepared for the Education and Accountability Committee. And Michael, if you could just take it from here and go through the report from Delines, please.
Absolutely. This meeting feels like it's come up very quickly since we last met, and just a few weeks later. But we have been able to finish out the second round of STEP Espanol reading assessments. These are, as you may recall, individual reading assessments. The teacher sits down with the child and it goes through, and it's kind of like martial arts. You have to master enough of each of the skills to move up each, what they call a step, from one step to the next. And we adopted this in both English and the pilot version in Spanish because it really gives teachers very granular feedback about what each student needs to be working on to keep their progress going. It's a lot more targeted in the information that the teacher receives as opposed to simply a reading level or a reading number. So when we last met, we were almost done with Spanish. We now are complete, and the Education and Accountability Committee has had a chance to review these data, which I'm going to briefly go over. We also are in the middle of administering the STEP in English. We were scheduled to be done by this meeting. However, as you may know, we had to go remote for a period of 6 days. And as a result of that, this in-person assessment had to be delayed. So we are finishing up the STEP English assessment round 2 right now. The STEP Espanol results, as we previewed in words last meeting, are quite encouraging. And I want to start by just expressing appreciation for our teachers and our interventionists. and our families who helped kids make so much progress. The hiring we've done, the resources we've purchased, the coaching for our instructional leadership team that we've been working with, all of that is all targeted at this area of math, but also literacy in English and Spanish. So to see growth in Spanish from one round to the next is terrific. As you can see here on this, half of our kids in grade K moved up at least one level, and a number of them moved 2 or more levels. We also should note that progress can happen even if you don't get your next belt, so to speak. There's progress within levels that we see as well. Even more of our grade 1 students moved up, and where our students had been most behind, and where we have targeted the most intervention resources. So 76% of our grade 2 students moved up at least one level, and a majority of those moved up at least 2. So I'd like to show visually a little bit of what that means. We are really seeing kind of 2 realities. One reality is in relative terms, in terms of growth, in terms of the trend and momentum. We're so happy to see this. And I know that our kids are making growth even since this has happened. And when we get English results, we expect them to be along these lines as well, and potentially even the other reality is that in absolute terms, we still have a long way to go to help our students recover academically from all the disruption. And so I think you'll see both of those when we look at the charts. So just to get you oriented, this was the first round, the beginning of the year in kindergarten. And the way these charts work is from left to right. You can see the different levels of achievement. And then when I flip to the next slide, you'll be able to see how each of these bars, which represents a student, starts to scatter more toward the right side as kids move up. So here was round 1 in kinder, and here's round 2. So you see still plenty of kids in that before step level, but more students who have reached step 1 or step 2. So again, that's before and then after. Similarly, in first grade, this was round 1, and here's round 2. So you can see, for example, if you look at the number of students in step 3, we didn't have any after the first round, and now there's a whole bunch there, and more on step 4. If you look up to second grade, where we had the most concerns about students being behind, this was round 1, and this is round 2. So again, you start to see more of the spread as the lowest levels empty out and more kids reach the middle and start to stretch into the higher levels. The other reality that I mentioned, the absolute sense, is that if you were on track, if you were on grade level, and remember we're talking about Spanish, and kids have different language profiles, and all the other caveats that we've shared before. But if you were to be officially on track as to where you should be in grade 2, you'd be in the green. You'd be here up at step 7. So hopefully you can see why I say we're extremely happy to be seeing the growth that we're seeing, because you get cycle after cycle of that kind of growth, and our kids just consistently keep moving up. Pretty soon you have a lot of green here and a lot of kids on grade level. But at the same time, you hate to see this much red on any chart, and it just underscores that we and our team have plenty of work still ahead of us. We're pleased with this. Again, hoping to see and anecdotally seeing maybe a little bit even more positive on the English side. Our next round of assessments will be in math as part of the MAP assessment. So maybe I can actually pause there before I talk about any next steps. I'll share a little bit more of what we talked about with the academic committee, but does anyone have questions or thoughts on that?
I just want to point out, Michael, that this is also, the periodic testing happened at a time when we were still being disrupted by the pandemic. And so even in the fall, there were times that we had to go remote a number of times. And so we're seeing some very good growth here despite the disruptions in learning.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yes.
Are these goals, they're just set by step, right? And I'm
Yeah.
assuming they haven't been adjusted for pandemic circumstances either.
No.
Okay, so it's not adjusted to what everybody else is doing, because everybody is similarly not growing the way we would have in normal years. I'm assuming.
I'll give you a couple of anecdotes. In a couple of different professional development cohorts that different members of our team are a part of, they've been really, really pressed to share data. And the reason for that is that in both cases, LEEP Academy was the only one in the cohort who had data. So this has been a year of absolute disruption across the board. So yeah, we definitely take that in context. If Delines were on the call, she'd probably also remind us, rightly so, that the STEP Espanol itself is in a pilot stage, and that we're one of the first schools to use it in both languages. And maybe this is actually also a good time to point out something else that we talked about with the academic committee. Best practice in dual language schools is to start with this kind of raw data, but also over time, develop an understanding of what are the pathways that students take to reach proficiency, but based on where they start. And that includes both what their home language is and how many years of exposure to the target language that they've had. So when I show you averages in Spanish that include kids who are in their first year of exposure and only speak English at home or only speak another language at home, it doesn't quite tell the story in the way that we will as we sort of break those out. So one of our big goals, not to make excuses or to avoid accountability, but to really give our team targeted goals, would be to refine what we're doing here based on the research, which does have some suggestions about how you can do that, so that we'll say, well, relative to your years of exposure and your home language, here's where we would expect you to be, and then here's where you are. And I know Delines was at a school previously where they had that sort of system, and it's important to us to be able to give you all that level of information.
This isn't a question, just kind of a reinforcement that within to remind everybody that if you want to look on like a class by class level, the framework update that we sent out as a pre-read also has a link to the STEP PowerPoint that the academic committee looked at earlier this month.
And I see Melissa has joined us.
Oh, there's
by
Melissa.
phone. Thank you, Melissa. So refining our goals and our benchmarks is one next step, but there's obviously some other very important ones. As I mentioned, seeing this kind of growth is not an accident. We've really focused with help with our external coaches for our instructional leaders we really focused on that literacy piece, on rolling out guided reading effectively, on adding interventionists who can help move kids who are behind in one area or another. And so that's only going to continue. We can't let up by any means, and if it's working, we're going to keep doing it. The other piece that is important to us particularly at the kindergarten level, where we've seen very good teaching and quite a bit of academic struggle, nevertheless, on the remote side, is to get students who are in the building, or rather who are learning remotely, safely back into our school building. So we actually just today reached out to all the families in kindergarten remote, and are going to be having an ongoing conversation with really that whole class about when can we get you in here in order to get your child learning academically, get your child that school experience for at least part of the year, socio-emotionally, and then hopefully we can go into the summertime, and then next year, to help get all of our kiddos, as Delaness would say, on track. So that's something that's we've mentioned before, but we're really actively working on. We've also talked a little bit about after school and summer opportunities. We're actually recruiting right now for a director of after school and summer programs, and as well as springtime after school tutor positions, with a goal of about a month from now, mid-April, to have the start of an after school program to supplement what we're doing with Roads to Success, but with a little bit more targeted academic help. And then looking ahead to what we can do to really take ownership and make sure that the summer and after school piece is really complementing what's going on in the classroom. And then finally, there are so many next steps, but another major next step is to just, we'll talk about the finance update, but as go into the rest of this year, making some mid-year investments, and then thinking about next year's budget, that we just continue to make academic recovery and achievement our North Star. Within the context of our model, of course, we're the Spanish immersion school. We do social emotional learning. We do all kinds of enrichment. We have our culture and our virtues, and this doesn't change any of that. But as we are thinking about our staffing model and the way we use our resources, that's really the goal. And so that's going to just be looming over what we talk about with all of you in the coming months as we put our budget together and think about more hiring. Speaking of hiring, and please, we're a small enough group, feel free to jump in with any questions at any point. But I'm happy to say that our search for a dean or instructional coach actually produced both. And so we shared with our team a couple of important names and faces that you all should get to know. Our current second grade teacher, Diana Ferreira, is a terrific classroom co-teacher in the OSOS classroom. She has been promoted to Dean of Instruction. Diana came to us from the Manhattan Charter School Network, as well as having experience in her native Chile. She has a background in language learning on both sides, and also has really just been a self-starter when it comes to being a teacher. Is always trying to dig into the research with our coaches, always trying to push the envelope of how rigorous the classroom practice can be. So we're really excited to have Diana. We are hiring for her position, and so this won't be an immediate change. But we've hired so many of our team members with the promise that we intend to grow, and we want to be a place where we help teachers grow. And so this is one example of that sort of in action. In addition to this internal hire, we also have hired a woman by the name of Tiara Watson. Tiara has not taught at LEEP Academy before. She comes to us most immediately from a private school, but prior to that, she spent several years teaching at Achievement First charter schools and then the Ascend Charter School Network, and really kind of helps balance out our team. She's got an expertise in math, in responsive classroom, and teach like a champion techniques. And you can almost even tell from her picture that she puts a priority on, positivity and building relationship teachers she's coaching. So between Diana and Tiara, a nice way to boost what we're doing mid-year. Dean of Instruction, Dorsa Fahami, will of course working, and sorry if I'm having internet issues. And our other Dean of Instruction, Christina Gutierrez, as planned, will be moving over to focus on our RTI process, all those interventions that we keep crediting our improvements with. So we're excited to have this team together. Tiara, by the way, has some experience as a dual language. As a teenager, she went down to her parents' home country of Panama, finished school. And so we always like when we can sort of have teachers who have that level of empathy for what it's like to be a student in our school.
Really quick, Michael, can I just ask you to recap? So now the Deans of Instruction will be, is it K1, 2, 3, and then RTI? Like 3 Dean, or do we have 4? In terms of the split?
It's 3. So it'll be 4 total, the fourth, not the fourth, but one of those being Christina, who's focused on the RTI. She still has the title of Dean. And then we'll have Dorsa and Diana with the titles of Dean, and Tiara joining us as instructional coach. We in addition to interviewing and having Diana go through the process, we were really pleased to have 3 other internal candidates. Several of our strong teachers were interested in this role. They went through a process of observing their colleagues, of interviewing with our leadership team, role playing, the whole 9 yards. And, I think it was a really good exercise in each case. They had a chance to think about their own career pathway. And one thing that we noticed was that we need to make sure that we offer a pathway for teachers to gain the skill of, for example, coaching another teacher. It's not something that you naturally do as a classroom teacher if you're scheduled to be teaching all day long. And so that brings me to one other adjustment, and this is not a mid-year adjustment, but looking ahead to next year, which would be to expand the grade level chair role within LEEP Academy. We have grade level chairs, and they work hard. They lead our teams of teachers as they do lesson planning, as they divide up the work each week of getting all of our curricula, internalized and turned into lesson plans. But other schools have found some success by beefing that up a little bit. And so if you have a grade level chair who can have a co-teacher, that means that he or she can actually take some time during the teaching week to go observe other teachers, to give them coaching. And we would expect to also join that with some training through Relay Graduate School or a similar program, as well as a larger stipend. We think that that's sort of been the missing link. And in addition to helping, teachers see their pathway from being a classroom teacher to an instructional coach or someday a principal, it can be helpful culturally because it means that many teachers have a coach who's also leading her own classroom. And there's sort of less of a sense of a big divide between sort of administration and teachers. We blur those lines a little bit more. I think it can be helpful. So that's not a decision without cost. It's not something that, is completely final in all of our minds, but something that I would say you should expect to see in the budget that we would want to recommend, because I think, we're just trying to live out that culture of continuous improvement for teachers. Couple of other quick updates on the operations side. We did receive information from the Charter School Center's biannual salary survey. And so that's some helpful market data to inform as we make new hires, and also, review the compensation that we have for our team. Like any organization, we want to keep our strongest performers, and we want to help our weakest performers find luck somewhere else. And part of that is always money. And so we want to be, really forthright about that, and take advantage of the information that we have. And then, not on the teaching or HR side, but just in general, we're actually only a couple of weeks from our deadline for the April lottery. Our lottery this year will be on April 12th. However, the deadline is midnight on April 1. And so we've really ramped up into blitz mode. You may start seeing Facebook ads again, ads in other places, Google, community newspapers, flyers around the neighborhood. We're a little behind where I'd like to be, but I am confident to end up with a nice long waiting list, the way that we've been projecting. And we are officially, in waiting list territory for each of our grade levels. It's just a matter of building that out, because we know not every single seat that we offer gets accepted. That is something to watch. I'll look forward to reporting on the final numbers there when we next meet, but that's a big focus of our team over these next few weeks.
How's enrollment so far, Michael? Is it looking okay? Not enrollment, but interests.
Interest is strong. We're getting a lot of organic interest. I think each year that portion of it seems to build. And then our return on advertising dollars has been stronger this year. So for the dollars that we spend, we're getting more applications. So I think just being more established helps with all of that. So yeah, it's a lot going on. So you always have to make sure that we're putting in that investment, at the right time of year. We also know that probably more than many schools, we do get a lot of kind of springtime interest heading our way. And so we will continue to do the open houses. We'll continue to have tours, virtually at least, and have people join our likely list, as we call it, because it's even though it's a waiting list, you're still pretty likely to get in.
I should know this, but we accept new students in kindergarten and first grade?
And second.
And second.
Yeah, we revised the policy last year. But that does mean that, and that's a good point, our current second grade cohort will not be backfilled. So we expect to still have 3 sections, but we're not accepting applications for rising third graders for next year.
I think it's a good opportunity here to point out that, the strong effort that we made from the very beginning to communicate our brand. And that means fulfilling our promise in every which way, that families feel that they're welcome, that they are essential, that they are our customers. There's a maxim that's used in advancement and development called the ABCs, always be closing. And our staff in the front office, our director of operations, our teachers, our principal, Michael, myself. Enrollment doesn't happen a couple months a year. Enrollment happens 12 months a year. And it means that every time a person goes by the sidewalk and they're looking at the building, we give them a card, say, here, come to our school. It really is something that's built into our organizational DNA. And I just want to say that, Maida, Director of Operations, and Margarita, that they're constantly on the lookout for new families and looking at ways to always be recruiting and always be closing. So it's a 12-month operation for us. Very proud of it.
Yeah, that's right. And I also want to give a special shout out to Yudis Pang, our operations manager. She has gotten into the habit of doing trilingual open houses in English, Spanish, and Mandarin, and it's awesome to watch. I think we'll have more applicants of Russian-speaking background in this upcoming year. We're still hoping to have more Chinese speaking applicants, and trying to figure out ways we can expand our sort of brand awareness in the Caribbean immigrant community as well. Of course, that all builds on, Sunset Park and, all of our Spanish speaking families. But we do continue to want to be intentionally diverse. So I'll make sure to share those breakdowns as best we have them when we meet next time. All right, I think, Roberto, I may not have captured everything we talked about, but do you want to speak to some of these?
Sure. I think I'll start with the last first, because I was telling Michael this morning, we as a leadership team, we are our harshest critics. And we do that intentionally. I think we're all driven by a passion for excellence. We prepared a report, and it's our annual report to the New School Venture Fund. The gentleman who represents New School Venture Fund and is our liaison to this funding agency is Antonio Tapia. And Delines, myself, Michael, met with Antonio last Wednesday and gave him a full-blown PowerPoint presentation, all the bells and whistles, but not in an overdone way. Sometimes we have a tendency to want to, put our best foot forward. Well, that's fine. We do that, but we also, I like to say, we do it warts and all, because it's important for our partners, like New School Venture Fund, to see that we are always on the level with them, and that we are always also telling them not only our successes, but our challenges. In a word, at the end of the presentation, Michael can confirm this as well as Delines. He says, you guys, as far as we're concerned, you guys hit it out of the park. And that moved me a great deal, because even throughout all the struggle for the last 2 years, to be able to get that kind of commentary from one of our historical partners from the very beginning, 2015, New School Venture Fund was there as a partner. So I asked Antonio, I said, we're having a board meeting next Tuesday, and it would be great if you could just send some comments to the board that I could share with you. And if you don't mind me, it's a very short piece, but I'd like to just read it to you. He says, Roberto, thank you for sharing the updates during our time together on Wednesday. We continue to be thrilled to be partnering with you and your team, and thankful for the work you're doing to support students and families in New York. Of all the incredible work you do, Delines and Michael are doing alongside with your staff, one of the things that struck me most during our conversation was the care and support you demonstrate for your students and families. It came through in how you spoke about them as much as in what you do to serve them. As a partner in education, but also as a native New Yorker and Latino, I'm grateful that LEEP is in the community doing the amazing work you're all doing. Keep it up. This is your accomplishment, board. You made our charter possible from the very beginning. You allowed us the opportunity to bring all of these wonderful people into our school that we've hired. And you've given us so much trust and confidence to be able to move a lot of this forward. In our first year, it was tough because we didn't have the money. In our second year, it was tough because of a pandemic. And yet here we are excelling, not because we said it, but one of our strongest philanthropic partners is saying it. So I'm going to send this along to you for your records as well, because it is a testimony to the incredible work that Michael, Delines, Dorsa, Cristina, Edgar, all of our team is doing on a daily basis to ensure that we are successful. And it doesn't happen by accident. It happens because we planned it this way. And despite all of the struggles we've been able to accomplish so far, and we're not, these aren't laurels we're sitting on. This is just a marker in time to show that it can be done. Y si se puede. So with that, last week, we had a nice opportunity to meet Pastor Ortiz. I brought him up to the building. We couldn't give him a tour because we had to quarantine that day. But Pastor Ortiz is the pastor at Grace Baptist Church on 6th Avenue and 53rd, one block and one block over from our school. There's a parking lot adjacent to the church, and I talked to him about the idea that Michael and I had discussed regarding having our own personal playground at the church and a partnership possibility. Well, he was very excited about that possibility, and he's going to take that idea back to his elders, and hopefully I'll be getting a response for a further discussion as early as this week. It'll mean a significant investment, but I think that it'll be to both our organizational benefits, and that's how he saw it. So I'm really hopeful that something will come from that. As far as renovation updates, we're still.
Sorry, really quickly, just didn't mean to interrupt you. Could you kind of share a little bit more detail the way that you shared earlier this week about just the difference between the previous playground situation and the upcoming
Sure.
playground situation?
Yeah, you know, when we started the school, we had made arrangements every day and 3 times a week to take our kids to Rainbow Playground. And it was a nice walk. It was pre-pandemic. We got pretty good at doing it. And that's a longer walk. It's up 54th all the way to 6th Avenue, and then right 3 blocks. We had good control of the kids at the very end before the pandemic, but now it's a different world, and we're trying to come up with a solution that still provides an outdoor opportunity for our kids. And this would certainly do it in a way that's more controlled. It'll be fenced, it'll be just us, and it'll be a good opportunity for a partnership with a local nonprofit organization / church to be able to make that happen. So we're excited about the possibility. A lot's going to depend on their elders and how they feel about partnering with a public charter school, but that's our work, and that's what we'll be working on. Does that cover? Yeah. On renovation, you know, we're looking at a building right now that is already maxed out, and that makes me very nervous. I walked into the office this morning, and Michael had drawn up a big map with every single classroom filled, and we kind of knew that going in, that certainly we're going to have 3rd grade and all of our classrooms and even our arts classroom filled. We've got projections for a full school next year. It only means that we have to get really working on ensuring that 4th and 5th grade are covered, and I'll report on that later, not tonight. But that is our ongoing work. As far as renovations themselves inside the building, still back and forth. I have a commitment from the landlord that they are going to fix the roof and that we will be able to repair the water damage on the 4th floor. It's not extensive, but nobody wants a leak inside their new 4th floor renovation. So that's one of the major headaches that we're dealing with right now. And again, there's going to be a lot other things to report as we go forward. Condoizing the building is a long-term 6-month project with a lawyer to convert our space into a condominium, and that'll help us reduce our operating expenses by not having to pay property taxes. So that's a project as well. But again, I will be reporting more on that as we get into the process with our attorney. That's all I have.
Thank
Questions?
Yeah. It's like no questions.
Oh.
Bob's been patiently waiting.
I was just going to say,
Always.
I just have a comment. I just wanted to say thank you for all the work trying to find an outdoor space. I know it means a lot to many families. It was a question that came up a lot in the remote tour that I took part of. I just watched it since class is going, and I haven't been able to see the school as much. I wanted to see the tour anyway. And the question came up a lot, and it just made me, I got very emotional just thinking that there's the possibility. And of course, I know it's not certain, but it would make me, and I know many families, happy to know that the kids have a chance at being outdoors safely through this, because it's, you know. So thank you.
You're welcome. I mean, we're going to be working. If that doesn't come through, we're going to keep looking. And it's really important for us too. We need our kids to get fresh air. And it's always great for them to get the extra walk and have a place to play together. And we'll do it safely. You know, we'll do it under the current guidelines, but it's really important to us as well. So thanks for mentioning it.
All right, well, for more good news, I think Mr. Keogh, in David's absence, can maybe share some financial updates.
Sure. I'll try to keep this brief. The school continues to be in a very strong financial position. Our year-to-date surplus is $830,000, driven primarily by the good news that we received last month that our PPP loan was fully forgiven. So we were able to recognize that as revenue. Cash on hand is about 1.1 million, super strong. So we feel good about that. After the last board meeting, our takeaways were that we've been reasonably assured that the contingency funding that we've been holding in the event of a per pupil decrease would be able to be released. We're assured there won't be a funding cut this year. So that opened up about $400,000 that we were able to kind of reforecast and reinvest back into the school. So all that to say, formerly we were projecting an annual surplus of about $540,000. We are kind of reinvesting about $300,000 back into the school between now and the end of the fiscal year in June. So about $65,000 of that is will be invested kind of in salaries through mid-year hires, deans of instruction, instructional coaching for staff, the director of after school and summer programs, dean of students, and a comprehensive kind of tutoring program, 2 hours a day, 5 days per week, $20 per hour for the tutors that we bring on board. So that staffing investment will cost us about $65,000. And we're also investing about $230,000 into other than personnel services that would provide for additional curriculum and curriculum development, educational software, leadership and operational consulting, some IT consulting, staff and student recruitment, professional development for existing staff, and then some things related to real estate through DBI projects, our real estate consulting firm, the condoization of the building and the subsequent legal fees, and the playground renovation that Roberto mentioned as well. So all that to say, we are kind of releasing about $400,000 in contingency planning to cover these costs, and our forecasted operating surplus is still increased to $640,000, which is great news, and for a school in its second year is very strong. Financial ratios look fantastic. So we feel good kind of going into the last few months of the year. There was also a call kind of across the charter space today, just talking about finances for next year. So while the pandemic has been going on, the state has received a lot of kind of supplemental federal funding through Trump's 2 relief packages and the package most recently approved under the Biden stimulus plan as well. So all that to say, next year's per pupil rate is actually projected to go up about 4.5%, which is good news. And then kind of through 2 federal stimulus packages, we're getting a one-time shot in the arm worth about anywhere from $3,800 to $4,200 per student, which we can take over the next 2 to 3 years. So all that to say, it frees up a lot of general fund revenue for some like awesome things at the school. And yeah, once those details are kind of ironed out by the state education department and the state budget office, we should be able to start drawing on those funds later this year and certainly at the beginning of next fiscal year.
Thank you, Bob.
Sure.
Thanks, Bob. Melissa was texting me that she would like to ask a question, but I'm not sure if she's meaning during this financial portion. So I'm just gonna, I know she's in the car. She is able to hear us, but I think she's still driving.
Melissa, feel free to jump in when you can get on. Well, I guess I just want to say that we're obviously excited to be in different kind of a mode when it comes to resources. Anytime you start out as school, the math gets easier looking into year 3, and this is gonna allow us resources. And then as a school, as a management team, our job is gonna be to stay fiscally responsible and put them to work in terms of driving the results that we need. So it does open up some possibilities, and it's exciting to think about.
Absolutely. The prospect of starting the year with a surplus that you can direct toward, areas of need, having the building be in place, not hopefully having to deal with too much more quarantining, I'm sure is an extremely welcome change for this entire group. and not to mention all of the students and families. I'm very, very excited to see what we can do, given all these, setting up the conditions this well.
The upside to having a strong financial picture is that now we can fully invest in our team members. And, we wanted to do all of that since even before we opened. But now we have the clear opportunity to engage partnerships from a position of strength and not from a position of, right, I'm not going to call it deficit, but when you didn't have enough money to even start your launch year, it's a whole different picture when you're in year 2. So we're very grateful. We're mainly grateful to our families who continue to see us as a shining light in their neighborhood and in their community. So listen, this only happens and continues to happen if we deliver, and the team is getting us there. So.
Okay, Melissa tried to chime in and couldn't. I don't think we could hear her. So she sent me her question, which is, how much are you thinking to invest in leader and teacher PD?
Well, I just said, but Michael, why don't you talk about the TNTP relationship as well as our discussions on Center for Applied Linguistics, as well as some of the summer PD ideas?
Yeah, I may have a slide in my back pocket about this. Let me see. Yeah, so it's a variety of things. The mid-year, well, correctly, was pegged at about $50,000, and then there would of course be more going into next year's annual budget. We have an instructional leadership coach, not one of our instructional coaches, but a coach for our coaches from the KIP network, who's come to us as part of our New School Venture Fund partnership. That partnership is ending, but we plan to keep that coach working with our team, helping them stay focused on the highest leverage work that they can do. And so that's one piece. There's also different kinds of one-off and on-demand resources. Roberto mentioned the Center for Applied Linguistics. They have some great kind of basic knowledge building online courses that we're going to make available to our team. People come to our school with different levels of background about the dual language model, and so these are the national experts, and they've got bulk pricing on some of their resources. A number of our folks are going to the WIDA conference coming up, where New York is not a WIDA state. This is a dual language standard system, but it is a professional development convening. So we'll keep looking for those kinds of opportunities, and then of course adding the coaches who can basically shorten our coaching cycles and get each of our teachers more time with an in-house instructional coach. That's a big focus. Last thing I would mention, we've talked about this before, but adopting the Whetstone system, which I know Emily also uses at her network. This is our coaches got iPads today. They can walk around and basically enter their feedback on what they see in the classroom into a common platform where teachers can view it, where the leadership team can view it according to our LEEP Way rubric, so that everything is really standardized and we can know exactly what each teacher is working on. So those are kind of the categories, but the answer to the question is about 50K through the rest of this fiscal year, and then looking at substantially more in next year.
There's another piece to this that Michael and I started talking over with Bob, is looking at the compensation of our team and ensuring that we're aligned now that the survey is out on compensation. We want to make sure that our jobs are aligned and people are getting paid what they need to get paid. So that's also a big part of creating that professional arc for our teachers, for everybody really, but so that they can feel as though that, you know, they can be financially successful, that they're going to be making a decent living, plan for their future, have leadership opportunities, and also continue to learn. So again, like I said before, a lot of this happens and this thinking starts to get more fluid when you have a really good bottom line in your finances. So we're fortunate to be there, and I know that Michael and Delines are going to be actively looking for opportunities for all of our team members.
I just want to pass along Melissa's responses. She thanks you for the update, Michael, and says it's excited about the prospect of the KIP coach and thinks it's a good idea to use Whetstone. She's familiar with it.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, and thank you very much, Bob. It is, you know, this and the step results. It's nice to get a. I'm sure it felt this way for the staff, but it is so nice to get some good news on top of good news, on top of the New Schools Venture Fund good news. We've been, I'm sure, all needing a little bit of good news.
One thing, Michael, we didn't report on it directly, but we have scheduled the annual meeting with NYSED, and that's in April. Michael, help me, 26th?
21st, I think.
That's the 21st?
I believe so, and that actually is a next point. I know that as part of that, SED likes to meet with the officers, but it doesn't have to be on the same date. But Gabrielle, maybe you and I can make sure to follow up with everybody's schedule.
Yeah, I think that'll be good. And you see, I'm assuming that Paula will need to meet with the officers during the day, during the workday.
I probably, but
We just need to
I'm not
talk
sure.
to her about it. Okay. So
Okay, it's the 21st.
David, well, David's not here. But I will send an email to Charles and David, just kind of putting a calendar hold for around about that time. But it would be helpful, I think, if we would just get a sense of how much time she needs, so that we can start blocking that time on our work calendars as well.
Okay.
And the board meeting is the day before, FYI.
Right. But we're not, are we sure that she wants to attend a board meeting again this year, or does she just want to talk to us?
I believe it'll just be a separate meeting.
Okay. Got it. I think next year she'll probably want to observe again. All right. Well, that will take us then. So we've kind of already bled into the executive committee portion of the meeting, which is fine. Melissa, I really certainly hope that you can hear us, because this portion of the meeting will essentially be to bid you goodbye, because this is Melissa's last meeting with us as an official board member. You know, whatever bandwidth she will be able to provide us after this official end of her term as in any sort of advisory capacities, of course, not expected, but very much appreciated. Hang on, let's see, she might be able to, all right, she can hear me. I know that Michael and Roberto are going to want to say some words, but if I can just go ahead and start off, I want to just express my deepest gratitude and highest respect and admiration for Melissa as a professional, as a board member, colleague, as a person, as an educator. The amount of expertise and integrity that she has brought to her work on the board, the way that it has informed, I think, a lot of decisions that we've been able to work through together as a team within the board and with the school leadership team has been absolutely invaluable. She will leave big, big shoes to fill. And it has been an absolute pleasure and honor to have served with her, I think, as long as she was able to be with us. So Melissa, thank you. It will never really be enough to say, but I want to say a deep, deep sense of gratitude for all the work that you've done and in whatever capacity you might be able to advise, opine, but certainly what you have done has been more than enough. So thank you.
Michael, after you.
Thank you. I guess is more than most folks who I've had a chance to work with in this sector, and which is now going on many years. So you always brought this sense of duty. And I know sometimes working with us was a duty. You got into this telling us this is something I feel obliged to do. And it really has been public service to our school, the best interests of our kids, in particular in tight moments when we were dealing with closures, when we were dealing with trying to set academic priorities. You know, you've always brought that spirit of, you know, this is part of your calling, and you've also been tough on us. And you know, I know that it can be easy when you're a more senior leader in an organization to talk a big game about continuous improvement and feedback. But you've held us to that, and me in particular. Anytime I share enrollment numbers, I think, what's Melissa going to think about that? And so I appreciate you're playing that full role as a board member for us.
Thanks, Mike. Melissa, I hope you can hear this because I'm going to say it again. When I first heard that Melissa was retiring off the board, I said, well, is that 2026 or 2028? And I say it again because it is with heartfelt gratitude and thanks that I go back to our first days and our launching and having to step in front of NYSED and the staff at NYSED and the harrowing just getting to Albany and knowing that you were in the midst of a great community tragedy in your school and you had to be at the center of it all and you still made time, you still put everything on the line to be able to be with us, to come into the office, into the Brooklyn office, to take the meeting with us. And that has always been a huge, huge gift. Without giving up on your own community and your school, you still made time for LEEP in its infancy. So in many ways, you know, we gave birth to LEEP together. And I'm grateful for your ganas and for your continued coraje, your valentía, your respeto, la confianza que tienes en todos nosotros are immeasurable. I know that this isn't goodbye. It's just, well, we'll just send you another email sometime when we need some advice and good counsel and know that you'll be there. So de parte de todos, de parte de la escuela, de parte de las maestras, del Inés, Mayra, everybody, we just want to thank you and te queremos mucho, con todo corazón.
Ella dice que fue un placer.
Gracias por todo, Melissa.
Gracias, Melissa. I think we're all gonna, from now on, we'll miss you. And whenever we're at a crossroads, we'll be like, what would Melissa say? And we'll keep that in mind. So you're still with us.
An indelible mark for sure. Thank you very, very much, Melissa. I know you can hear us she might prefer it actually not being able to speak and just being able to hear, but. So feel free to keep showering her. I know that she's just enjoying it all, even though she's probably blushing. Okay. But for the moment, just keeping an eye on time, we will go into the academics and accountability report out. Most of what we covered, it was the STEP results, but Michael, you talked about wanting, I think we should at least bring up the DEI related point that we are still working on post the last meeting.
Yeah, that's right. In the course of a renewal conversation with one of our vendors, we shared some of our internal thinking about, exactly, very precisely how do we think about and answer questions about one aspect of our work, which is just our approach to diversity and inclusion. You guys know we're part of the Diverse Charter Schools Coalition, and that's a pretty broad group, and there's more than one approach that people have to these issues. So, without trying to have the meeting before we have the meeting, we realize there is something to talk about there. There are schools that are thinking about what their philosophy is in the classroom and in staff development situations. And that's actually important to understand well enough to be transparent with candidates and families who are thinking about joining our school community. So I think we've made a bunch of progress to sort of share what it is in different parts of our school with candidates, but this one needs a little bit more work. And so we're going to be scheduling a conversation with the academic committee to kind of talk through that in some more depth. We know how important it is.
Yeah, so we're going to circle back on that most likely next week, I think, because Deli Ness is out this week. And in the meantime, are continuing to look for we have not quite yet secured another recruiter, but are looking into other options for recruiters and still doing that work additionally on our own.
Right.
Okay, I think we're ready to move to the next slide. It should be board roles and development. So I am still behind on setting goals for the board's portion of the report out. I apologize for that, but I really am hoping to have those done by next month. I will circulate them prior to, I'm going to hold myself accountable for sending them prior to the next meeting, circulating them to the group to see what folks think. And we can also take up some time if there is time in the next meeting, and I'll talk to the leadership team beforehand to see if there's any time that we can just kind of carve out, have that discussion in real time. Melissa is leaving us. I think that kind of turns our attention to, of course, no one could actually fill her role as herself, but we will need to fill that slot for the sake of just our numbers and quorum, etc. And Roberto and I spoke, I can't remember, similarly to Paz, my sense of time is gone, but I don't know if it was this week or last week, regarding the prospect of a board member that he brought up that I think is a really, really interesting prospect. So Roberto, I'll let you speak to that.
Rather than publicly pull that together right now, Gabrielle, I'd love to be able to send you the bio that I promised you.
Oh, okay.
And then if that's okay, you could share it with the board at your pleasure. And then keep, this individual is someone who is in Sunset Park, is a person who is in a leadership role in community development and business development. And so I'm putting that information for Gabrielle and for the board's discussion. But I'll get that to you tomorrow, Gabrielle. I'm sorry I hadn't gotten it to you yet.
No, that's okay. I didn't know if you might want to just speak to it anyway. That's completely fine. Something that I think I may also circulate that actually ties to the last 2 points that we've made is the announcement of NYSED's new RFP for charter school applications. And essentially it touches on both of these points in that the entire department is putting a much greater emphasis on community-based authorizing and diversity, equity, and inclusion work being woven throughout schools' designs. So essentially, I think that they are trying to kind of be at the forefront nationally of putting a larger emphasis on community involvement, both within the design of a school, but also within, decision-making bodies. Of course, one of the primary ones being boards, but I'm sure also into the leadership team to ensure that high-level decisions that get made are reflective of the community's needs and wants. So I will send around that article to everybody, just to kind of give you some context as well for that sort of not new, but additionally emphasized lens that NICET is taking, and how that will affect both new charter schools and, I'm not sure if it's going to figure into any revisions to their evaluation framework for us moving forward, but it could. So I think it will be, involving community members will be something that we'll be looking to do in the future, and I'll circulate the information that Roberto sends me as well. Okay. We are now, any questions from anybody before we go? Go ahead, Maho.
Not me, but I noticed that Alma Woods has a question, and actually I also have a similar question.
Okay.
She says, I just noticed that in the Q&A, for the summer program, is it open to all students? When will information be shared? As a parent who utilizes summer camp for my child, this is the time for registration and early bird specials. If the school will have a program, it would be great to know the information as parents make final summer decisions. That's what Alma said. And I also wanted to add to that, wanted to know about if it's open to all, and whether there's any kind of enrichment programs beyond. Like, I know there's a focus on helping the academic progress of those who might be a little bit behind or who need the help. But I'm also wondering beyond that, if there's any enrichment, I don't know, anything else we're planning that could be fun and appealing for kids for the summer.
Yeah, I could speak to that. To the second question, I know this is something that's very close to Deli Ness's heart and all of ours, that even when a child has some academic recovery to do, that we don't miss the chance to close the opportunity gap. And obviously this summer it will depend a bit about how open the world is, but going out and getting some of those off the beaten path experiences, the park visits, the museum visits, the beach, those types of things, is important to include for everybody. I think what we know is that we will at least have a targeted academic program that will also include some enrichment. I'm sorry, I don't have the answer to this yet. We don't know yet if we'll be able to offer something for every single student. It is a hope. As you point out, Ms. Woods, it is urgent because parents have decisions to make. But at the same time, I can't promise a program until we really have the logistics sort of nailed down. So in the next 2 to 3 weeks, we will be sharing information about what the eligibility would be, what the cost, what the time of day. I think for those who are eligible, this would likely be a Monday through Thursday program, again, with a balance of academics and enrichment. But we don't quite know that. And I'm sorry if anybody listening, if that's in a position of having to sort of decide without all the information, but we are working on that with some urgency, and it definitely will not only be academics.
Thank you, Michael. Ms. Woods, does that answer your question? I was actually going to move that into the public comments portion since we're headed there anyway.
Yeah, we can definitely come back to it too.
That's fine.
Was there more board updates? Because otherwise
No,
public comment is the next item.
Yeah, no more, nothing further.
Let's see.
Your Honor.
Have we got an approval on Emily's process?
So Emily has to, after all this time, there are a couple of small revisions to her paperwork. She just has to submit a more updated resume.
Okay.
And I think we were maybe using an outdated financial disclosure form. So she'll just have to resubmit those things. But at the very least, her information's in the portal. I think we're right there. Really hope we can get that have her be official by April.
Oh, good to know.
Yeah, that just came in this week.
Yeah, I won't comment, but obviously it should not be difficult. Okay, so
Any more public comments?
No, thank you.
do you want to? Okay,
No,
thank
I
you
think
so
you
much.
answered it. Yeah, you
Okay.
answered it. This is the time for registration. And so I'm a click away from registering Jair for the Y. And if there's an option at the school, it would be nice to, you know, as a family, make a decision. But thank you for sharing what you have shared thus far.
Of course, thank you.
And Amma, thank you so much for reminding us of that timeline. Every year I forget when I'm supposed to be registering for summer stuff. So this is great because I don't know how aware the school is of when parents are doing that, but if we want a chance to include the kids, we need to get this information out.
That's a really good point. I really had no idea that this is how early summer activity registration starts.
Every year it catches me by surprise.
Gosh, yeah. Okay. Hey, there's Melissa. Yeah. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Good to be seen. Thank you. So glad I'm able, it's all over. I don't have to see you anymore.
Speech.
I heard it already. You did the speeches. Don't need to. Nope, not now.
Melissa, feel free to come back and haunt us in public comments.
Oh, I may.
If you like, as you know, they're more than open to everybody. No, in all seriousness, I know that we've said it already, but thank you. Your contributions have been immeasurable, have helped shape the school that LEEP has become and will continue to develop to be. So thank you.
No problem. I'm a partner in the work. This is my last board meeting, but I'm not done with LEAP. So just, you have me all the way until the end of March.
All right. Sounds good.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. Any other questions, comments? I want to remind everybody that our next meeting is April 20th. Anything further before we move to adjourn? Bob, as always, thanks for hanging in there till the end. Okay. Then I would like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting. May I have a second?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Have a good night, Al.
Have a good night.
Good
Good night.
Gabrielle, if you want to call me.